You are welcome to Immaculate Math YouTube channel, where I'm devoted in building students with zero tolerance for the fear of mathematics. This is going to be an interesting video for every first year student. So for all year 1 students in University of Lagos preparing for FS114 exam, I want to congratulate you guys because you are going to find this video very useful. In today's video, I'm going to be solving 2018/2019 FS114 examination question. I am sure that the reason why you are here is because you want to strive for excellence, you want to come out in flying colors in your exam. And I want to assure you that you are in the right place. All I need you to do is just to press the subscribe button. Of course, it is free, so that you can have access to amazing videos like this. And also on the notification icon so that you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. This video is not only useful for University of Lagos students, it is also useful for any student aspiring to be in University of Lagos, and also for students in other universities and polytechnics. As a rule of thumb, don't just sit down watching, get your pen and paper, pause the video to see whether you can attempt the question yourself before you see the solution. And I pray that the Almighty God will grant you success. With all this, let's head over to our video for today. In this question, the 5th term of an arithmetic progression is 13 and the 14th term is 49. Find the first term and the common difference. Now from the question, the very first thing you might want to remember is the nth term of an arithmetic progression, which is given as Tn is equals to a plus n minus 1 multiplied by your common difference, where your a is your first term and d is the common difference. Now from the question, they say the 5th term. Now if you replace n with 5, we are going to have t5, which will give you what? A plus 5 minus 1 multiplied by what? By your common difference is equals to 13. And if you replace n with what? 14. So we have t14, which is what? A plus 14 minus 1 multiplied by a common difference, which gives you what? 49. Now if we try to simplify what is here, we are going to have this to be what? A plus 4d to be equals to what? 13. And we have this to be what? A plus 13d, which is equals to what? 49. Now let's call this equation 1 and equation what? 2. Now we need to solve this simultaneously for us to get our a and what? And our common difference. Now we want to use our calculator to solve it. We just need to substitute all those variables inside. We have this to be what? 1. We have this one to be what? 4. We have this to be 13. And we have this to be 1. We have this to be 13. And we have this to be what? 49. So we have our a to be minus 3 and our what? D to be equals to what? 4. So meaning that we have a to be what? Minus 3 and d to be what? 4. So the correct option here is what? Is D. In this question, they said the distance of P of x, y from A of 5, 1 and B of minus 1, 5 are equal. Then, now the very first thing you might want to do is for you to sketch what is going on here. Now let's say we have point P to be this place. Let's say point P is x, y. Now because they are saying that the distance of P of x, y from A here means that let's say we have A around this place, which is what? 5, 1, and B is also what? Minus 1, 5, minus 1, 5. So they said this distance between this point and what? And this point are what? Are equal, meaning that line AP is what? Is still the same thing as line BPB. Now another thing you might want to remember is your distance formula, and you remember that the distance between 2 points, let's say point x1, y1 and point x2, y2. Okay, so the distance between these points is given as distance formula, the square root of x2 minus what? X1 all square plus what? Y2 minus y1 all what? All square. Now let's calculate the distance between A and P. So the distance between A and P is given as what? So we have this to be what? Square root of let's say this is our what? X1. Let's say this is our X1 here, Y1 and X2 and what? Y2. So what do we have? we have this to be, so we are going to have this to be, what's our x2? Our x2 is what? X minus x1, which is what? 5 all square, then plus what? Y minus what? Minus y1, which is what? 1 all what? All square. And the distance between P and B is given as what? It's given as the square root of, now let's say this is, let's call this one x1 and y1. So we want to find the distance between these points. So if we want to, so that means that we are going to have this to be what? X minus what? That's x plus 1 all square, because minus times minus will make this to be what? Plus, then plus y2, which is what? Y minus y1, which is what? 5 all square. So that means that since your line AP is still the same as your line PB, what does that imply? That implies that we are going to have this to be what? We are going to have the square root of x minus 5 all square plus y minus 1 all square to be equals to the square root of x plus 1 all square plus y minus 5 all square. Guys, we need to do what? We need to square both sides. So if we square both sides, what are we going to have? That implies that we are going to have this to be what? X minus 5. So if you square both sides, squaring both sides, so what happens? You notice that this will cancel this and this will also cancel this, so I'll be left with x minus 5 all square plus what? Y minus 1 all square to be equals to x plus 1 all square plus what? Y minus 3, y minus 5 all square. So if I try to expand this, each of them here, what am I going to have? I'm going to have this to be x minus 5 all square. So I'm going to have this to be x square minus 10x plus 25, then plus, if I square this, I'm going to have this to be what? Y square minus 2y plus what? 1 to be equals to, if I square this guy here, I'm going to have x square plus what? 2x plus what? 1. Then last one, if I square the last one, I'm going to have y square minus 10y plus what? 25. Of course, there are some terms that will cancel each other. Now you notice that here I have x square here, I also have positive x square here, so this one is going. And another thing is that I have minus 10x here. Is there minus? Okay, I don't need to cancel that one. I have 25 here, so 25 here is also going. And here I have y square and I also have y square, so this one is also going. Then what is left? I'm left with what? I'm left with minus 10x minus 2y. Then also you see, notice here that I have 1 on both sides, so that meaning that I'm going to have 1 is going to cancel 1 here. So I'm left with what? Minus 10x minus 2y to be equals to what? To be equals to minus 10y plus what? 2x. So if I collect like times, I'm going to have minus 10x. So if 2 comes to the other side, I'm going to have minus 10x minus 2x to be equals to what? Minus 10y plus 2y. That means that I'm going to have minus 12x to be equals to minus 8y. And if I divide both sides by minus 4, I'm going to have this to be what? 3x is going to be equals to what? 2y. So this is the relationship between them. So 3x is equals to 2y. So what's the correct option? The correct option here is what? C. In this question, we said a geometric progression has 6 terms. The first term is 192 and the common ratio is 1.5. An arithmetic progression has 21 terms and the common difference is 1.5. Given that the sum of all the terms in the geometric progression is equals to the sum of all the terms in the arithmetic progression, the question says we should find the first term and the last term of the arithmetic progression. Now the very first thing we might want to do is for us to interpret each of the statements. And they said a geometric progression has 6 terms. That means, let's say we have a geometric progression, that means the number of terms is what? Is 6. The first term is 192, that means we have our A to be what? 192, and the common ratio is what? 1.5. So we have this to be 1.5. Another statement says An arithmetic progression has 21 terms. Let's say we have an arithmetic progression which has the number of terms to be 21, and the common difference here is what, 1.5. And they said given that the sum of all the terms in the geometric progression is equals to the sum of all the terms in the arithmetic progression, and you remember that the sum of n terms of a geometric progression is given as what? That's if your common ratio is greater than 1. So we have this to be a open bracket r raised to power n minus 1 divided by what? R minus 1. And the sum of all the terms in the of n terms in arithmetic progression is given as what? N over 2 open brackets 2a plus n minus 1 then multiply by d. Alright, so now let's say we substitute all the parameters here inside this formula. Let's see what we are going to have. So that means we have the S6 of a geometric progression is given as sum of systems of the first systems of a geometric progression is given as a, which is what, 192 open bracket r raised to power n, which is what, 1.5 raised to power what's our n? Our n is 6 minus 1 divided by what, 1.5 minus 1. And the sum of n terms of a, sum of the first 21 terms, that is if you put n to be 21, the sum of first 21 terms of an arithmetic progression, alright, is given as what? It's given as n, that's 21 over 2 open bracket 2a plus 21 minus, if you put 21 here, so you have 20, that's plus 20 times your common difference. Your common difference is what? 1.5. Now don't forget that from the question it says the sum of all the terms in the geometric progression is equal to the sum of all the terms in the arithmetic progression. What does that imply? That implies that what, S6 of a geometric progression is still the same thing as S21 of the arithmetic progression. That means if we equate this together, that implies that we are going to have this to be what, 192 open bracket 1.5 raised to power 6 minus 1 divided by what, 1.5 minus 1 to be equals to 21 over 2 open bracket 2a plus 20 times what, 1.5. And if we simplify this, we have this to be what, 3990. That's if we evaluate this, we are going to have 3990 to be equals to what, 21 over 2 open bracket 20 plus what, 20 times what, 1.5. And if we divide both sides by 21, we are going to have this to be what, 3990 divided by 21 to be equals to, this is 1 over 2 open bracket 20 plus what, 2 times a, not 20, this is 2a, that's 20 plus 20 times what, 1.5. Now 3990 divided by 3990 divided by 21, 3990 divided by 21 is what, this will give us 190. So that implies that we have 190 to be equals to, and if we used 1 over 2 to open this bracket, what are we going to have? We are going to have this to be what, a plus what, 10 times what, 1.5. That implies that we have this to be what, 195 minus, now if you bring 10 to this side, we are going to have minus 10 to be equals to a. That implies that we have this to be, this is 15, not 10, this should be 15 because 10 times 1.5 will give us 15. That implies that we have our a to be equals to a. Then that implies that what, our a is equals to what, 190 minus 15 will give us 175. So we have this, our first term to be what, 175. Now the question says we should find the first term and the what, and the last term. So what's the last term of an arithmetic progression? The last term of an arithmetic progression is given by your first term plus n minus 1, just like your nth term, multiplied by your d. And we have our first term now to be what, 175 plus n minus 1. Don't forget that our n here is what, n here is 21. That's 20 times what, my common difference, which is what, 1.5. And if I multiply this together, I'm going to have 175 plus, I guess it should give us 30. Okay, so we have this to be 30. 175 plus 30 will give us what, 205. So the correct option here is what, is A. In this question, they ask us to evaluate the numerical expression 4 minus 5 open brackets minus 2 minus 3 times 10 raised to the power 2. Now for us to evaluate this, now you see that this is a very simple problem. You can even use a calculator to solve this, or you can even solve it with by your hand. Now if you open this bracket, you have 5 open brackets minus 2 minus 10. Now if you square minus 3, you are going to have this to be 9, and if you expand this, you have minus 2. Then if you multiply this, you have minus 90, and you have this to be minus 2. That's what minus 92. And if you multiply this, you are going to have this to be what minus 400 and what 60. So the correct option here is what is B. In this question, they said if sine alpha is equal to cos beta, which is equal to 1, then we should find alpha and beta. Now we have sine alpha to be equal to 1, and we also have cos beta to also be equal to what 1. That means that our alpha is what arc sine of what 1, and our beta is also what arc cos of 1. And arc sine of 1 is what arc sine of 1 is 90 degree, because sine 90 will give you 1. And arc cos of 1 is what 0, because cos 0 will give you 1. So that means we have alpha to be 90 and we have beta to be what 0. So the correct option here is what is D. In this question, they ask us to find the next term x in the series. That's 3, 5, 11, 20, x. Now let's try to study this sequence. Now we have the first term here. Let's say we have 3, we have 5, we have 11, we have 20, and we have x. So the first term here is 3, and the second term here is 5. Third term is what 11, and the fourth term is 20. So we want to look for the fifth term. Now let's try to take difference between the first term and the second term from the first term. So we have t2 minus t1. Of course, will give us what 5 minus 3, which gives us what 2. And difference between t3 minus what t2 is what 11 minus what 5, which gives us what 6. So what do we notice? This is not an arithmetic progression. It's not an arithmetic progression. And even if I take the ratio between t2 and t1, it's not equal to the difference between t3 and t2, the ratio between t3 and t3. So it's also not a geometric progression. So we have to be very careful here. So how do we look at this problem? Now one thing I see here is that I know that the first term is what? The first term is 3. And what of the second term? The second term here is what? 3 plus 2 can be written as 3 plus what 2, right? And the third term can be written as what? Can be written as 5 plus what 6, and our t2 is still the same as 5. So this is 5 plus 6, which can be written as what t2 plus what 3 times what times 2, and which will give us what? Which will give us 11. And our t4 is what? Our t4 is 11 plus what? 11 plus what will give you 20. I think 11 plus 9 will give you 20, which can be written as t3 plus what 3 open bracket what 2. This will give me open bracket 3, because 3 times 3 will give me 9. So this will give me what 20. So generally t5 will be what? T5 will be 20 plus a number I don't know, but I know that this is what t4 plus 3 times what, because this is 3, this is 2, this is 3, so definitely this one will also be what 4, which will give me what 20 plus 3 times 4 is what 12, which will give me what 32. So the correct option here is what is B. But we can define a recursive relation. This is actually a recursive relation. We can define a recursive relation to be what? So we can have our Tn to be equals to Tn minus 1 plus what? 3 open brackets n minus 1. Of course, where your n is strictly greater than 2. And you have your T1 to be equals to 3. And we have our T2 to be equals to 5. With this, we can find, with this recursive relation, we can find any number of terms we want. For example, your T1 is 3 and your T2 is 5. So meaning that if we want to find our T3 is what? So meaning that we have t2 plus 3 times 3 minus 2, 3 minus 1, that's what 2, which give us our t3. And our t4 is what? T3 plus 3 times what? Times 3. Then t5 will give us t4 plus 3 times 4. I hope you guys get the check. So this is just the recursive relation. So you can either use the recursive relation or try to see how it works. So the correct option is what? 32. In this question, they said, is the point minus 3,8 inside or outside or indeterminate or on the circle whose equation is given by x squared plus y squared plus 4x minus 8y to be equals to 5. Now, for us to know whether this point lies inside, the very first thing we might want to do is that we might want to know the center and the the radius of this circle here. Now, if we know that, we can now compare the distance between the center and the and this point with the radius. And one thing is that if the distance between the center and this point is less than the radius, that means that this point must lie inside this circle. But if the distance between the center and this point is greater than the radius, that means that the point lies outside the circle. But if they are equal, that means this point lies on the circle. And if the distance between the center and and this point is extremely big than than the radius, that means it's indeterminate, and I don't think we should have this case of indeterminate. All right, so now let's try to determine the center and the radius. Now you remember that we can write this equation of circle in this form. We can write it as we can write it as x squared plus y squared plus 4x minus 8y minus 5 to be equals to 0. And if you compare this with the general form of equation of circle, which is x squared plus y squared plus 2gx plus 2fy plus plus c to be equals to 0, what do you notice? You notice that your 2gx is equals to 4x, and your 2fy is equals to minus 8y. So what does it imply? This implies that I have my g to be 2. See that x cancel x and 2 cancel this, so we have g to be 2, and I have my f to be so y cancel y, then I have this to be minus 4. That means the coordinate of the center is given as minus 2 comma 4. I just need to take the negative of this this g and f to get my center. And my c here is my c is minus 5. And also you will know that your radius formula is given as the square of the center, that's a squared plus b squared minus minus c, and I have my r squared to be equals to, so if I square this, I'm going to have minus 2 all square plus my b, which is 4 square, right, plus 5. So if I put so I'm going to have this to be minus and then minus 5. So if I simplify this, I'm going to have this to be I'm going to have this to be 4 plus 16 then plus 5, which will give me 25, right? So I have my r squared to be 25. So if I take the square root of both sides, I'm going to have r to be equals to 5. So I have my radius to be 5. Now, having known that, I need to calculate the distance between the center and and this point. So let's call that r1. Alright, the distance between the center and this arbitrary point minus 3,8. And the distance formula is given as, we all know the distance formula, that the distance formula is given as the square root of x2 minus x1 all square plus y2 minus y1 all square. And if I substitute all the parameters there, I'm going to have this to be, let's say this is my x1 y1, and this is my x2 y2. So if I substitute this directly, I'm going to have this to be minus 3, right, x2 minus x1, which is what? Which is plus 2, right, all square, then plus 8, that's y2 minus y1. So what's my y1? 4, that's minus 4 all square. Alright, so I'm going to have this to be the square root of this is 1 square, right, because this I'll give you 1 square, then plus 8 minus 4 is what? 4 square is what? 16, which will give me square root of 17, and square root of 17 is approximately 4 point something. So now you see that the distance between the center, okay, which is our R1, is less than the distance between, is less than the radius. So what does that imply? That means that this point will lie inside the circle, inside the circle. So it will lie inside the circle, and we can demonstrate that here. Now this is the equation of the circle in which I plotted the graph. Now this is our radius. The radius here is what? 5. That is the distance between this point here and this point here is what? Is 5, right? And now let's try to figure out the point minus 3,8. Minus 3,8, so this is 0, this is 1, minus 1, this is what? Minus 2, this is minus 3. So this is minus 3, this is 5, this is 6, this is 7, this is 8. So minus 3,8 will lie somewhere here. So this is minus 3,8. So you see that this point what lies inside what? This point lies inside this what? Circle. So it lies inside. From the graph, you can see that it lies inside the circle. So the correct option is what? Is C. In this question, they say which of these may not be true of right angled triangle with one of its angles to be 30 degrees. So if we suppose we have an equilateral triangle, of course an equilateral triangle has the property of having all its angles to be what? Equal. That means each of the angles there will be what? 60 degrees. So this will be 60 degrees, this will be what? 60 degrees, and this one also will be what? 60 degrees, because I'm bisecting it here. I'm going to have this to be what? 30 degrees, and this also to be what? 30 degrees. That means I have a right angle triangle. Let's say this have a side of 2, each of them to be 2. Of course, if I divide this will give me 1 and what? 1. So because if I add them together, it will still give me what? 2. And by Pythagoras theorem, you will discover that this one is what? Square root of 3. Alright, so we want to know from your right angle triangle, okay, about 30 degrees. So what we are interested in is what? 30 degrees. So they said cos 60 is what? 0.5. So if you have cos 60, don't forget your SOHCAHTOA. Alright, so sine is what is defined as the ratio of the opposite to the what? Hypotenuse, and cos is defined as the ratio of the adjacent to the what? To the hypotenuse, and tan is defined as the ratio of the opposite to what? To what? Adjacent. Now the first option here is cos 60 is equal to 0.5. let's check cos 60. Cos 60 is equal to 0.5. so we have cos is adjacent. So if this is the opposite, that means the adjacent is what? 1 over hypotenuse. That's true. So this is true. Then what of the other option? They said cos 60 is equal to sin 30. That one is definitely true, because cos 90 minus theta is what? Sin theta. That's complementary angle. So meaning that if I put my theta here to be 30 degrees, so I'm going to have this to be what? Cos 90 minus 30, which is what? Sin 30 degrees. So we have this second option here is what is true. Then the third option, I have tan 30 multiplied by root 3 is equal to 1. Now what is tan 30 here? Tan 30 here is what? We have our tan 30 degrees to be equal to opposite over adjacent. So our opposite here is what? Opposite here is what? 1, right, over adjacent. What's our adjacent? Our adjacent here is what? Is square root of what? Square root of 3. Now if I substitute, if I cross multiply, what do you have? We are going to have tan 30 degrees multiplied by what square root of 3 to be equals to what 1. So this option C2 is what is correct. Then the last option, we have 2 cos 30 to be equals to tan 60. Let's check that. 2 cos 30. So what is cos 30? Cos 30 is what? Adjacent over hypotenuse. That's what? Square root of 3 over hypotenuse, which is 2. We want to check whether it is equals to tan 60. Tan 60 is what? Tan 60 is what? Opposite over adjacent. Opposite over adjacent. That's what? Root 3 over what? 1. So definitely this one too is what? This one too is what? True. So everything in this option are what? Are true. So the correct option here is what? Is E. In this question, they said if the point P of 2, 1 lies on the line segment of point A of 4, 2 and B of 8, 4, then now let's try to analyze this problem. So let's say we have a line, let's say we have a line segment here, and we have our point A to be what? We have our point A to be 4, 2. So this is our point A, and we have our point B to be what? 8, 4, because this point lies on the line segment. Let's say we have point P around somewhere here, which is 2, 1. Okay, so we want to see what's going on here. All right, so let me try to find the distance between A and P. All right, so you've remembered your distance formula, which is defined as, let's try to find line distance between A and P. So using the distance formula, we are going to have this to be what? The square root of this. Let's say this is your x1, x2. Let's say this is your x2, y2, and this is your x1, y1. All right, so we have y2, x2 minus x1. That's 2 minus 4 all square plus what? 1 minus 2 all square. All right, to be equals to, this is as what? Minus 2 all square, then plus minus 1 all square, and which will give you what? The square root of 5. And let's try to calculate the distance between A and B. All right, so if we calculate the distance between A and B, so what do we have? AB. We have this to be what? Let's say this is x2. Okay, let's call this one x1, y1. Okay, A and B, so we call this x2, y2. All right, so we have, you can actually take it any way around. You can call this x2, y2, or you call this x1, y1, or any way around. You still get your answer. So you can just take it in any order. So here we have our y2, x2, that's 8 minus 4 all square, right? Plus 4 minus 2 all square. All right, so to be equals to what? This is square root of 8 minus 4 is what? 4. That's 4 square is 16 plus 4 minus 2 is 2, then 2 square is what? 4. That means we have square root of 20, which can be written as what? 2 times square root of 5 to root 5. And let's try to calculate one more distance. Let's try to calculate the distance between P and B. P and B also. We have this to be what? So square root of P and B. So we are taking this one to be x1, and we are taking this one to be what? Y1. So we have this to be what? X2 minus x1 all square plus y2 minus y1 all what? All square. So we have this to be square root of 8 minus 2 is what? 6 square is what? 36 plus 3 minus 1, 4 minus 1 is what? 3. 3 square is what? 9. So we have this to be square root of 45, which can still be written as what? 3 square root of what? 5. Now let's try to take the ratio. Let's try to look at the relationship between AP, AB, and what? And PB. So if I take AP and AB together, what am I going to have? I'm going to have, let's take the ratio. So the ratio of AP towards to AB is like square root of 5 divided by what? 2 square root of what? 5. So I have this square root of 5 cancel this, so that implies that I have AP to be equals to what? 1 over 2 AB. And let's take the relationship between AP and PB. AP and what? And PB. PB. So I have this to be square root of 5 over 3 square root of what, 5. So this cancels this. That implies that I have my AP to be equal to what, 1 over 3 PB. And let's take the relationship between A, B and PB. AB and what's PB. So I have this to be what? I have this to be 2 square root of 5 over what? 3 square root of 5. Then this cancels. Then that implies that I have my A. I have 3 AB to be equals to what's 2PB. No, now from the options listed, which one corresponds to any of this option here? So I think D is the correct option because I have my AP to be equals to 1 over 2 AB. So D is the what's correct option. In this question, they said if n belongs to a positive integer, find the coefficient of x raised to power minus 1 in the expansion of 1 plus x raised to power n multiplied by 1 plus 1 over x raised to power n. Now, this is a very non-intuitive question. Okay, let's try to go for it. Now, you recall that what do we want to remember? We want to recall that a plus b, that is your binomial expansion, that is a plus b raised to power n. I will try to write this in a summation form. You guys should master it. It's very easy for you to write something in summation. So a plus b raised to power n in summation form is what? Summation r starting from 0 up to what? Up to n of n combination r of a raised to power n minus r b raised to power r. Of course, this is your binomial theorem, and the nth term of this binomial theorem is given as the nth term. It's given as, that's the r plus 1 term, is given as r n combination r, then a raised to power n minus r b raised to power r. This is your, let's say, fifth term. Your fifth term means that your r will be 4. Your second term means that your r will be what? Your r will be 1. Okay, so and don't forget that if you have anything raised to power n, that means the number of terms in that binomial expansion will be n plus 1. Okay, just like if you are expanding a plus b raised to power 2, you are going to have 3 terms. If you are expanding a plus b raised to power 3, you are going to have 4 terms. So if you are, meaning that you are going to have r plus 1 terms. That's why we have this to be r plus 1. I hope you guys understand. So now if I replace in this formula, if I replace a with what? 1, and I replace b with what? X, what am I going to have? So if I have 1 plus x here, alright, so 1 plus x raised to power n is still the same thing as, so replacing a with what? 1, what will I have? So I have this to be r starting from 0 up to n of what? N combination r. Then of course, if I replace 1 with a with 1, that means 1 raised to power n minus 1 will still give me what? 1. So then replacing this, we have x raised to power r, and the rth term is given as, the r plus 1 term is given as n combination r x raised to power what's x raised to power r. But I want to find the coefficient of x raised to power minus 1. I'm just trying to give you this, just whet your appetite. Now, looking at this thing here, I can rewrite 1 plus x raised to power n multiplied by 1 plus 1 over x raised to power n to be equals to what? 1 plus x raised to power n. Of course, if I take the LCM here, what am I going to have? I'm going to have this to be what? X plus 1, everything raised to power what? N. So I'm going to have x plus 1, everything, all divided by x raised to power n, which can still be written as what? 1 plus x raised to power n multiplied by what? 1 plus x raised to power what? N divided by what? X raised to power what? N. Alright, I'm just trying to apply my law of indices. This can actually separate, since if you have, from your law of indices, if you have a raised to power m divided by a raised to power n, you can write this as, sorry, b raised to power m, you can write this as a over b raised to power what? M. So I hope that is clear. So now from here, we now have this to be what? We have this to be 1 plus x raised to power 2n from your law of indices. Since they have common base, that means I can add the power, all divided by what? X raised to power n. Alright, now in this formula here, I can rewrite this as what? Now if I replace n with 2n, That means I'm going to have this to be what? 1 over x raised to power n times the summation of r starting from 0 up to what? Up to 2n. Don't forget that I'm replacing n with 2n. Of what? 2n combination r multiplied by what? X raised to power r. Now I can multiply this, I can bring this inside. So that means that I'm going to have this to be but I have to take note that this n here is different from this n here. So I have this to be summation of r starting from 0 up towards 2n of 2n combination r, then multiplied by x raised to power r divided by x raised to power n. Alright, so which can still be written as the summation of r starting from 0 up to 2n of 2r combination r of x raised to power r minus what? Minus n. So this is this. So meaning that the coefficient of this guy here of x raised to power minus 1 in the expansion of this will still be the same thing as the coefficient of x raised to power minus 1 in this expansion. And since I'm able to write it in the binomial coefficient form, that will help me to be very easy for me to find the coefficient here. Alright, now don't forget that I want to find the coefficient of x raised to power minus 1. Right, now for me to find the coefficient of x raised to power minus 1, the power here, the power of x here, alright, the power of x here in this expansion must be equals to what? Minus 1. That is, if I expand, by the time I'm expanding this, I must get to the point whereby I will have x raised to power what? Minus 1. Alright, so that means that I want to have x raised to power n minus r to be equals to x raised to power minus 1. So applying, if I equate the base to the power together, what does that imply? That implies that what? My r minus n is equals to what? Minus 1. And that implies that what? My r is what? Minus 1 plus what? N, right? Which is seen as what? N minus 1. That means my r is what? Minus 1. So that means the coefficient of this, the coefficient is just this guy here. The coefficient of x raised to power minus 1 in this expansion would be, I'm going to be having 2n, sorry, this 2 is n, not r, so 2n combination, what's my r? My r is what? N minus 1 from here. So multiply by what? X raised to power minus 1. So of course the coefficient of this guy is what? The coefficient of this of x raised to power minus 1 is what? 2n combination n minus 1. So the correct option here is what? Is C. In this question, it said the first term of a geometric progression is 64 and the sum to infinity is what? The sum to infinity is 256. They ask us to find the sum of the first 10 terms. And don't forget that the sum to infinity of a geometric progression is given by this formula, a over 1 minus r. And if we substitute all these parameters inside, what are we going to have? We are going to have this to be what? 256 to be equals to 64 over 1 minus what? Minus r. If I cross multiply, I'm going to have this to be what? 256 minus 256r to be equals to 64. Collecting like times, I'm going to have this to be 256 minus 64 to be equals to 256r. And dividing both sides by 256, I'm going to have r to be equals to 1 minus 64 over 256, which is still the same thing as 1 minus 1 over 4, which is 3 over 4. That means my common ratio is what? 3 over 4. Of course, my common ratio is less than 1. So what is the sum of the first n terms? The sum of the first n terms, if your r is less than 1, is given by this formula: a open bracket 1 minus r raised to power n over 1 minus r, provided that your r is less than 1. So if I substitute all these parameters inside, what am I going to have? I'm going to have this to be what? I'm going to have sum of the first 10 terms, that's if n is what? 10, to be equals to a. What's my a? That's 64, open bracket 1 minus 3 over 4 raised to power what's 10 divided by what? Divided by 1 minus 3 over 4, which will still give me what? 64, open bracket 1 minus 3 over 4 raised to power 10 divided by what? 1 over what? 4. And if I use my calculator, So let's try to press this in our calculator. So we have 64 open brackets 1 minus 3 over 4 everything raised to power 10, right? Then divided by 1 over 4, because 1 minus 3 over 4 will give us 1 over 4, divided by 1 over 4. So this gives us what? 241.5, which is approximately 242. So we have S10 is what? 241.5, which we can approximate towards 242. So the correct option here is what? Correct option here is C. In this question, they said if the angle between side R and X in a right angle triangle with sides R, X, Y is 45 and R is 2 square root of 2, then now let's try to see what they are saying. Let's say we have a right angle triangle. Now we have this to be what? Y. Let's say we have this to be Y and we have this to be X and we have this to be what? R. So we are given R to be equal to what? 2 square root of what? 2. And we are given the angle which X makes with this positive is what? 45 degree. So they ask us to find the relationship between them. Now let's consider, we recall our SOHCAHTOA. Right? That's, well, let's look at the relationship between X and R first. So the relationship between X and R is what? Adjacent and hypotenuse. That means we have cos what? 45 to be equal to adjacent. What's our adjacent? Our adjacent is what? X over R. So what's our R? That means we have X over 2 square root of what? 2, right? So, and don't forget that your cos 45 is what? 1 over what? Square root of 2. That means we have square root of 2 to be equal to X over 2 root 2. So that means that what? My X is what? 2. So that means I have my X to be what? 2. Now, by Pythagoras theorem, so what do I have? I have my X square, that is the sum of two adjacent, the square of the sum of two adjacent sides is equals to what? The square of the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is my R. So if I square X, that means we have 4 plus what? Y square, right? To be equals to what? To be equals to R square. So what's my R square? I have this to be what? 2 square root of 2 square. So that means this will give me what? 4 times what? 2, which will give me what? 8. And if I collect like times, I'm going to have y squared to be equal to 8 minus what? 4. And that means that I'm going to have y squared to be equal to what? 4. And if I take the square root of both sides, I have my y to be what? 2. So the correct option here is what? D. In this question, they said a 2-year-old boy stands at points -1, -3, 2, watching in fear as two sisters, Shade and Tayo, throws water balloons at each other. Shade is at B at point 2,3 and Tayo is at 0,4. The two sisters throw at the same time and their balloons collide and explode midway between them. Now, how far is the boy from the explosion? Now, what are the key words here? You have to notice here. They said the balloons collide and explode midway, because they are throwing the ball at the same time there. So there's possibility that which they meet at what? At an equal distance. Now the first thing is that we try to draw a freehand sketching of what the problem is looking like. We try to make the problem real. So we have a 2-year-old boy. Let's say we have a 2-year-old boy here standing at points -1, -3 over 2, right? So he's observing two sisters. Let's say we have the first sister. This is the first sister here. That's Shade at points B of what? 2,3, and also Tayo at point what? Let's say this is where Tayo is. That's comma 4. Let's call this point 6. All right. So now they said these two sisters are throwing water balloons at each other. So they said it meets at what? The same point, right? They collide midway. So if they collide midway, what does that mean? Let's say we have a line here. Let's say this is the line connecting Shadi and Tayo. So if the balls collides midway, let's say this is the point at which it collides, the midpoint between this point and this point, which is let's call it point M. That is the midway point. Let's call it M. So they ask us to do what? How far is the boy from the collision? How far is the boy from the collision? So we want to calculate this distance between these points here. Let's call this point. This is our point A. Alright, so we want to calculate the distance between this point and what? And this what? And this point. And this point. So we want to calculate line AM. Right? So for me to know line AM, I need to know my M, the point M first. And we know that since they collide midway, alright, that means I can use my midpoint formula. Alright, and you remember that your midpoint formula says that if you want to know the midpoint between 2 points, let's say you have x1, y1, and you have x2, y2. The midpoint formula is very simple. You just need to add the 2 points, the 2 axes together, coordinate wise. You are divided by 2, and divide this on 2 also by what? 2. So meaning that the coordinate of this midpoint is what? The coordinate of this midpoint is given as 0 plus 2, that's what? 2. Then 2 divided by 2 is what? 1, comma 4 plus 3 is what? Is 7. Then 7 divided by 2 is still what? 7 over 2. Let's just put it that way. Now let's now try to find the distance between this point and this point. So let's call this point here x1 and y1, and let's call this point here x2 and y2. And if we use our distance formula, every one of us should remember our distance formula. So if we calculate the distance between A and M, right? So which will give us the square root of what? The square root of 1 minus 1, that's x2 minus x1, that's what? X, that's 1 plus 1 all square, plus 7 over 2 minus, that's plus 3 over 2 all square, which will give me what? The square root of 2 square plus, if I add this together, I'm going to have this to be what? 5, that's 5 square. So I will have this to be square root of 4 plus 25, which give me what? The square root of 29. So the answer of this one is what? Is A. In this question, they said given that A is minus 2, B is 5, A2 is what? 3, B2 is minus 5. They asked us to evaluate this expression here. Now this is a very simple question. What we just need to do is just for us to substitute all the values here. So we substitute A2 to be what? 3, and we will substitute A1 to be what? Minus 2. Substitute B2 to be what? Minus 7, and B1 to be what? 5. So if we substitute that, what will that give us? That will give us the square root of what? 3 plus 2 all square plus minus 7 minus 5 all what? All square. So this is minus 5. This should be minus 5. Minus 5 all square. So which gives us what? This is minus 5 all square. It gives us this to be square root of 3 plus 2, that's what? 5. That's 5 square is what? 25 plus this is 144. It gives us what? Square root of 169, which is what? 13. So the correct option here is what? 13. It's actually plus or minus 13, but we just pick the positive. Most cases we pick the positive answer. In this question, they said obtain the equation of the straight line passing through the points 2, 3 and cutting off the intercepts equal in magnitude and what? Opposite in sign. Now you remember the equation of line, the line intercept form. Okay, now the equation of a straight line in the intercept form is given as x over a plus what? Plus y over b to be equals to what? 1. Alright, let's say we have a straight line. Let's say we have this line cutting this point. So this is your distance from here to this place is your b, and distance from here to this place is your what? Is your a. So this is your a and b. So this is your line intercept form. Alright, now let's try to figure out this problem. They said passing through this point. So let's say we have a Cartesian plane now. Cartesian plane, and we have 2, 3. So this is 2, 3. So 2, 3 should be somewhere. 2, 3 should be somewhere here. We have this to be 2, 3. 2, 3. And since they said it's cutting off intercept equal in magnitude and opposite in sign, that means that it's possible it's cuts what? It's cut the. So that means that we have equal in magnitude and opposite in sign. Means that our a is equals to what? Our b rather is equals to minus a. So that means anywhere we're supposed to have our a, anywhere we're supposed to have our b, we're having minus a. So opposites, equal and opposite in what? In sign. The magnitude is equal and it's also opposite. That means if your a is what? Is 3, that means your b will also be what? Minus 3. That's the meaning of equal and opposite in sign. So let's represent this with what? A, and this one will be what? Minus a. Now if we substitute it inside this equation over here, so what are we going to have? We are going to have this to be what? We are going to have this to be x over a plus what? Y over minus a to be equals to 1. And you can write this as what? X over a minus y over a to be equals to 1. And you can even write this as x minus y to be equals to what? A. So if you substitute this point, since this point lies on this equation, that means that if I substitute x to be what? To be 2 and y to be equals to what? 3 here. So what am I going to have? I'm going to have this to be what? 2 minus 3 to be equals to a. That implies that what? My a is what? Minus 1. And if I substitute this a to be minus 1 back in this equation, what am I going to have? I'm going to have my equation of straight line to be what? X minus y to be equals to what? Minus 1. So the correct option here is what? Is B. In this question, they said which of these expression is not correct. So we have cos square theta to be equals to minus sine square theta plus 1. Okay, so we know that from your trig identity, we know that cos square theta plus sine square theta is equals to 1. So if I bring sine square theta to the other side, I'm going to have cos square theta to be equals to minus sine square theta plus 1. That means this is correct. A is correct. What of B? If you have tan square theta, okay, we know that if you divide all through here by if I divide each of these identity here by sine or cos square theta, alright, I'm going to have this to be what? 1 plus tan square theta to be equals to sec square theta. That means that if I bring 1 to the other side, that means I'm going to have tan square theta to be equals to sec square theta minus 1. That means B2 is what? Is correct. What of C? This is, I have sine alpha cos beta minus cos alpha sine beta. Of course, this will give you what? Sine alpha minus beta from your addition formula, from your addition of trig. And the last one, you have sec square theta, cosec square theta plus cot square theta to be equals to 1. Now, if you have cos square theta plus sine square theta to be equals to what? 1. If I divide all through by sine square theta, alright, sine square theta and sine square theta, I'm going to have this to be what? Cot square theta plus 1 to be equals to what? Cosec square theta. So meaning that cot or cosec square theta minus cot square theta is equals to 1. So this is wrong. So the correct option is what? D. Because they said which of the following expression is not what? It's not correct. So the correct option there is what? D. In this question, they said with respect to S equals to the summation R starting from 0 to n of n combination R of A raised to power n minus R B raised to power R. The expression of this yields what? Let's try to see what's going on here. So we have, by your binomial theorem, right, we have A plus B, right, raised to the power n. A plus B raised to the power n is given by what? Is given by this formula, summation R starting from 1 up to n of n combination R of A raised to the power n minus R B raised to the power R, right? And if I replace my B here with what? Minus B, what am I going to have? If I replace B with minus B, I'm going to have A plus B raised to power A minus B raised to power n, A minus B raised to power n, to be equals to what? The summation of R starting from 1 to what? N of n combination R times n raised to power minus R times minus B raised to power what? R, which I can rewrite as what? The summation of R starting from 1 up to n of n combination R times minus 1 raised to power R, then A raised to power n minus R B raised to power what? R. So now if I add these two terms together, what am I going to have? I'm going to have this to be what? I'm going to have A plus B raised to power n plus A minus B raised to power n to be equals to what? To be equals to the summation of R starting from 0 up to what? Up to n of n combination R of A raised to power n minus R B raised to power R plus what? The summation of R starting from what? 0 up to what? N minus 1 raised to power R of n combination R A raised to power n minus R B raised to power what? R. Now if I try to expand the first guy here, what am I going to have? I'm going to have this to be what? If I expand this, I'm going to have n combination 0, right, plus n combination 0 of A raised to power n minus 0 B raised to power 0 plus n combination 1 A raised to power n minus 1 B raised to power 1 plus n combination 2 A raised to power n minus 2 B raised to power 2 plus n combination 3 A raised to power n minus 3 B raised to power 3 up towards n combination n A raised to power n minus n B raised to power n. Now if I expand this one, this guy here, so what am I going to have? I'm expanding this one now. So if I expand that one, I'm going to have this to be what? That's plus, because I'm adding. I'm going to have this to be what? N combination 0. That is, if your R is 0, you will see that this one is going to give me minus 1 raised to power 0 is going to give me just ordinary positive 1. And I have this to be A raised to power n minus 0 B raised to power 0. Now if your R is 1, what happens? That means you are going to have minus 1 raised to power what? 1. That means you are going to have this to be minus n combination 1 of A raised to power n minus 1 B raised to power 1. Then if your R is 2, that means minus 1 square will give me plus n combination 2, right, A raised to power n minus 2 B raised to power 2. Then if my R is 3, that means minus 1 raised to power 3 will give me minus of n combination 3 of A raised to power n minus 3 B raised to power 3. Like that. Now what do you notice? I notice that these are the odd terms. The odd terms are the one having 0, 2, 4, like that. All the odd terms are cancelling out. Sorry, the even terms, this is the odd terms. These are the odd terms. The even terms are the one that started with 1, 3, 5. These are the even terms. Now the even terms are cancelling out because n combination 1 is appearing. Since I'm adding them, n combination 1 and minus n combination 1 will give me 0. So this is cancelling out. This is cancelling out. So all the even terms will cancel out. But the odd terms are exactly the same thing. That means I'm going to have 2 of n combination 0 of a raised to power n minus 0 b raised to power 0 plus 2 of n combination 2 of a raised to power n minus 2 b raised to power 2 plus like that. So this is how you can see that this is 2 times. Now you can see that here this is my s here. Now if you check this, if I try to simplify this exactly, it will give me something like this, right? And these are these terms. The first term is my odd terms, so that means I'm going to have 2 times sum of what? Sum of odd terms, because the even terms are cancelling out. So that means I'm going to have 2 times sum of the odd terms in what? In S. So the correct option here is what? Is B. In this question, they said the total number of terms in the expression x plus a raised to power 51 plus x minus a raised to power 51 after simplification is what? Now from the question, you remember that anytime you are expanding a plus b raised to power n, you are going to have this to be what? N plus 1 terms, since a plus b raised to power 2 is what? A square plus 2ab plus what? B square. You see that if you count the number of terms here, you are going to have 3 terms. Likewise, if you are expanding a plus b raised to power 3, you are going to have what? 4 terms. So generally, anytime you are expanding a plus b raised to power n, you are going to have this to what? N plus 1 terms. Now if you have x plus a raised to power 51, how many number of terms am I going to have here? I'm going to have this to be what? I'm going to have this to be 52. I'm going to have 52 terms here anytime I expanded x plus a raised to power 51, out of which 26 will be what? 26 will be odd and 26 will be what? Will be even. If I expand x minus a raised to power 51 also, I'm going to have 52 terms, alright, in which what? 26 also will be what? Odd, and 26 will also be what? Will be even, because I'm having an even number. So anytime I'm having an even number, that means the number of odds will also be the same thing as the number of what's even. Okay, so that is clear. Now if I add these two numbers together, now from the previous question, we discovered that anytime we added x plus a raised to power n plus x minus a raised to power n, right, we got this to be what? 2 times sum of what? Sum of all terms in what? In x plus a raised to power what? N. Alright, so here if we add these two together, the even terms will cancel out, right? Because one is going to be exactly equals to the negative of the other. And the odd terms, what's going to happen to the odd terms? The odd terms are exactly going to be the same sign all through. And if we add it together, we are going to have 2 times 26 odd terms. So how many times are we going to have in this? We are just going to have 26 times. So the correct option here is what? D. Don't make the mistake of multiplying them together, because since both of them are exactly the same thing, that means if you have a here, you are going to have a here. A plus a is still the same as what? 2a, which is still what? 1 time. I hope that is clear. So the correct option here is what? D. In this question, they said a geometric progression has a common ratio of 2. A geometric progression has a common ratio of 2. Find the values of n for which the sum of the 2n terms is 33 times the sum of the n terms. Now, what is the sum of n terms of a geometric progression if the common ratio is greater than 1? Sum of n terms of a geometric progression is given as a open bracket r n minus what? 1 over r minus what? 1. Then that implies that what? If you substitute your r to be what? To be 2 here, what am I going to have? I'm going to have my Sn to be equals to a open bracket 2 raised to power n minus 1. Then 2 to the minus 1 is still what? 1. And we have our sum of 2n terms. That's if you replace your n with what? 2n. That means I'm going to have this to be what? I'm going to have this to be a times 2 raised to power 2n minus what? 1. Right? So the question says the sum of 2n terms is 33 times the sum of the n terms. That means we have sum of 2n terms is 33 times sum of n terms. So that's it. So if I substitute all these parameters inside, what am I going to have? That means I'm going to have this to be what? I'm going to have this to be S2n is what? A open bracket 2 raised to power 2n minus what? Minus 1 to be equals to 33 times a multiplied by what? 2 raised to power n minus what? 1. Now what do you notice here? You notice here that a cancels what? A cancels a. Then I have this to be what? 2 raised to power 2n minus 1 to be equals to, if I use 33 to expand this, I'm going to have 33 times 2 raised to power n minus what? 33. And I'm going to have this to be what? 2 raised to power n all square, right? If I bring this to the other side, I'm going to have minus 33 times 2 raised to power n. Then if I bring 33 to this side, I'm going to have plus what? 32 to be equals to what? 0. And if I let my p be equals to what? 2 raised to power n, that means that I'm going to have this to be what? P square minus 33p plus what? 32 to be equals to 0. And I will have this to be what? P minus 32. And I will have this to be what? P minus 1 to be equals to 0. That implies that what? My p is 32 or what? Or 1. And don't forget that your p before was 2 raised to power n. That means if my p is what? 32, that means I'm going to have 32 to be equals to what? 2 raised to power n. And I'm going to have this to be 2 raised to power 5 to be equals to what? 2 raised to power n. So if I equate both sides, if I equate the power, what am I going to have? I'm going to have n to be equals to what? 5. And also if your n is what? If your p is what? 1, that means I will have 1 to be what? 2 raised to power what? N. That means I have 2 raised to power 0 to be equals to 2 raised to power n. That means n is what? 0. But don't forget that your number of terms cannot be 0. You can't count something from 0, 1. Doesn't really make sense. So we don't take 0 as number of terms. Your number of terms starts from S1, S2, or T1, T2, first term, second term. You don't have 0th term. So you have first term, second term, first, third term, like that. So we ignore this guy here. So our correct option here is what? D. In this question, it said given that z is equal to lambda plus 4i all divided by 1 plus lambda I, where z is entirely real and lambda is a constant, find the possible values of what? Of lambda. Now, first thing is that we need to write our z in form of a plus bi. That's the first task. So if you have z to be equals to lambda plus 4i all divided by what? 1 plus lambda I, alright? So if I multiply both sides by the conjugate of the denominator, the conjugate of this is what? 1 minus lambda I divided by what? 1 minus lambda I. So I'm going to have this to be, if I expand this guy here, lambda times 1 will give me lambda. The lambda times minus lambda I will give me what? Minus lambda square I. Then 4 times I will give me what? Plus 4i. Then 4i times minus lambda I. Since I square is minus 1, that means this will give me what? Plus 4 lambda. All divided by 1 times 1 will give me what? 1. Then this times this lambda I times minus lambda I will give me plus what? Plus lambda square, because I square is minus 1. So if I simplify this, I'm going to have this to be what? Lambda. If I collect the real argument together, I'm going to have lambda plus 4 lambda, then plus this to be what? 4 minus lambda square times I, all divided by what? 1 plus lambda square. And this, I'm going to have this to be what? 1 plus 4 lambda over what? 1 plus lambda square plus 4 minus lambda square over what 1 plus what lambda square then I. So this is, I've been able to separate this one into real and what an imaginary. Now but there's a condition given that z is what is entirely real. Since z is entirely real, what does that imply? That means the imaginary part is what? 0. So that means that we have 4 minus lambda square over 1 plus lambda square to be equals to what? 0. So if I cross multiply, I'm going to have 4 minus lambda square. Since your lambda is a constant, we have 4 minus lambda square to be equals to anything multiplied by 0 will give us 0. That means I'm going to have 2 by your difference of 2 square. This is 2 square minus lambda square to be equals to 0. And if I expand this using difference of 2 square, I'm going to have this to be what? 2 minus lambda and 2 plus what? Lambda to be equals to 0. And from here, it is very easy for you to see that lambda is equals to what? Plus or minus 2. Alright, so the correct option here is what? Is B. This is where we are going to stop for today. I know you've gained a lot from this tutorial. If you are yet to subscribe, please do so now. And also don't forget to tell your friends about this channel. And together we shall all succeed. See you next time.